Welcome to Piece by Piece, a business podcast by Lumbermens. In this episode, we talk about creating a great company culture. Here's Ryan Terpstra and the president and CEO of Lumbermens, Steve Petersen. Well, let's talk about engagement and culture, because that's a big piece of it. I mean, everyone likes a good bank account, but also culture within the company on a day-to-day basis is very important. Lumbermens has what's called our mission, vision, and promise. And this isn't just an internal thing. This is posted on our website. This is, if you visit us, this is stamped on the wall.
Absolutely.
This is very public facing. Our mission, vision, promise. What is that, and why do we have that, and why is that so important to the company as a whole?
So I mentioned the fact that, you know, for quite a while, we thought of the ESOP primarily as a retirement, you know, the financial aspect of an ESOP. It was probably about 8 years ago where we really thought about the fact that, you know what, this employee ownership structure really means something, again, it can mean something in an employee's daily work experience. And so we start thinking about how can we be really purposeful about defining that, right? And really living that out. And so that kind of kicked off this process of, let's define our culture and our brand. You kind of think of culture being internal, brand being external. What do customers, suppliers, communities see? And then culture being what do employee owners see and experience. And when you start really diving into it, you know that those two things need to be synonymous. So from this kind of purposeful mindset of how do we really start defining that, we restated our mission statement, we developed a vision statement, and then we developed 4 promises around that. And those promises are really what are guidelines for defining the experience we want people to have. So mission, vision, promise, MVP. And so that MVP has become a vernacular for let's recognize employees that are living out the experience that we want to provide each other, that we want to provide customers, communities, our suppliers. And so it really has become a very purposeful process of saying this is the experience that we want people, whoever that is interacting with Lumbermens, to experience. And the experience that we provide employees has to be consistent with, you know, the experience that we strive to provide customers. Recognizing that we can make decisions that define that change that experience that other companies and other ownership structures, you know, can't do, because, you know, so many decisions in typical ownership structure is just driven by return on investment. And so, again, I mean, all of that is important for us. We need to be sustainable. We need to continue to grow because that impacts value in that 5-year forecast. But we can also choose to perhaps impact profits by making a decision to come alongside an employee who's, you know, in a difficult period of time or things like that. So we're able to make different decisions to really impact the employee owner's experience with Lumbermens. And that's something that is near and dear to my heart and the leadership team's heart. That's really kind of where that MVP came from. It's become a very big deal. We recognize MVP recipients each month and that type of things.
It's been a big impact on company culture. I'm assuming you talk about 8 years ago. So I came in and I get up to speed on the MVP. But it's always growing. In this past couple of years, we've started our Building Community with Heart initiative. And you talk about being able to get out there and help an employee or an employee owner family that needs it because it's the right thing to do. I know we support a lot of causes around here.
We do.
Because it's the right thing to do. And it might have been easier to pocket the money and get some interest out of the bank, but we decided that that's what we want to be about.
We want to give back.
Building Community with Heart allows employees to get paid time off to go into their communities and impact it. And we have hubs all around the Midwest right now, and all of those hubs have the opportunity to take this time and be paid to go out and positively impact their
You bet.
communities.
Right.
I know this is a big thing for you. You love
is.
building community with heart. Tell
Yes.
us how it came to be, why you love it, and how it's been going so far.
I talk about being purposeful, right? So really thinking about, how people experience Lumbermen's. And Lumbermen's was established with a legacy of giving back. The Bauma family, who founded the company, incredibly generous people, supported the community and many, many different organizations throughout the community. That was really done kind of behind the scenes. They're very humble givers. And so the employees, they had some understanding that was being done, but they didn't experience it, and they certainly weren't like a part of it. And so when we started this process of MVP and defining that experience, we talked about how can we engage the employees in what is a huge part of our culture, and how can we come alongside employees to actually join in on that. And so that's where, that was where this started. And so to your point, yes, we provide paid time off for employees to go. It might be something that they do individually, but we also have champions in each of our locations that really look for opportunities to create team environments where a team of employees from a certain location can go into the community and do a project or come alongside somebody or whatever. So that's been, I think we're in our second year of it, and it just continues to gain momentum. There are so many stories that are just so exciting about what employees are out there doing. And some of it is because we're supporting, but mostly it's because, employees want to give back as well. So it's pretty exciting.
So we talk about the opportunities out there for employee owners. We still have a typical corporate structure with leadership and everything. And with this commitment to MVP, we're asking it from the folks that are, out there grinding every day. We're asking for our leadership to do that too. What does that mean for the leadership though, and how does that kind of help guide the leadership of the company when it comes to putting this culture into action?
Sure. And you're spot on when you talk about we have a traditional leadership structure, corporate structure. One of the misnomers is when you talk about employee ownership, it's like, well, do the employees, are they involved in every decision like an owner would be? And the answer is no, of course, because that's not even practical, right? So we do have a leadership team, and the leadership team really is tasked with two very important things. One is to continue to make the company financially viable, right? Mm-hmm. To grow the company, because growing the company drives value up in the future. So the same things that are important to any company, regardless of structure, are important to us and every other ESOP company. The piece that is in addition to that I think makes leadership maybe more challenging in this environment is also being very conscious and aware of what experience our employees are getting and their families. So we talk a lot about being relationship driven, not transaction driven. That goes all the way from, how do we interact with customers, and we look at the value of the overall relationship and not necessarily looking specifically at individual transactions. The same thing is true of an employee owner. So there's a transactional relationship there, right? So an employee gives us hours and we give that employee pay. That's a transaction. And of course that happens at Lumbermen's. But how do we look at relationship with that employee and their family to say that employee and their family are better off being at Lumbermen's than someplace else, because we are really looking at, how are they getting more than just that hours for pay transaction. And so, it's incumbent on leadership to constantly be thinking of that, at the same time thinking about, the traditional business decisions and financial performance. So it's to me, it's challenging, right? But it's way more fun, because you're thinking about the nearly 700 employees of Lumbermen's and their families and how they are being impacted by what we do as a company. It's very challenging, but very rewarding and a lot of fun.
You mentioned that number. That number has grown a lot in the
It has.
last few years.
It has, yes.
How do you think our company culture has helped us grow in a very challenging job market when it comes to hiring new people?
When somebody has been with us for a couple of years, they begin to experience the culture, and they certainly begin to experience the power of the ESOP. So I can think back, because you mentioned the growth, I think we've doubled in size in the last 6 years. And over that period of time, and over that time when we have really focused on culture, the amount of referrals that we get from employees to their family, to their friends, is just, off the charts high compared to what it used to be. It used to be more of a traditional recruiting model and, job posts, and certainly we do that, but our employees have become a big advocate for bringing employees in, other employees, and just becoming more recognized in the community. As we have teams of employees out there doing community service, people start to know who Lumbermen's is, and so that also, brings Lumbermen's to the forefront when somebody's looking for a job. So yeah, I think all of that definitely plays into it.
How do you get to that level, though? If I'm thinking I'm someone who has a business and I want to improve my culture,
Yeah.
I'm listening to us talk about
Right.
it and say, yeah,
Yep.
okay, well, they just struck gold or whatever. It
Yeah.
just happens to work for them.
Yeah.
It takes more than just saying, we're going to have a good culture, now everyone go out and be happy. Like, what goes into making this work?
Yeah, you are so right. I will tell you that you can't fake it, and it can't be just words. I mean, you truly have to have a heart for this. When we started going down this path again 6-7 years ago, and started talking about MVP and the 4 promises and how we want that to define how people experience us, and we developed a presentation, and I went around to all the employee groups throughout the entire company and gave this presentation. The thing that I wanted to be 100% sure of is that this was not the flavor of the day. I mean, how many times doesn't it happen when an initiative is kicked off and 6 months or a year later, nobody hears anything more about it? We had to be very purposeful about not letting that happen. So I think one of the key things for us was we developed a brand strategy team. And so it consists of 10 to 12 people, cross-functional from around the company, different levels of position and things like that meet quarterly to talk about, are we on brand, are we on culture, are we on mission? Always asking ourselves, how are people experiencing Lumbermen's in their first 90 days? Well, let's talk about that, and let's impact that. Let's change how we do things so that experience is better and better. And so it's really our accountability group to make sure that this isn't forgotten. And I think that was really vital in the first couple of years. At this point, it's so much a part of who we are and our vocabulary and just how we think. That team still meets, but it has become part of our culture, right? And so it's kind of self-fulfilling in that regard. But if you don't do purposeful things like that, the risk is that it just becomes words. And so you have to be authentic and you have to be sincere about it. And I would add a final thought too, that this is a journey, so we can't ever have the sense that we've arrived, that we're done. Again, if you're not constantly thinking about how we get better, constantly focusing on it and showing employees, hey, we see you, you'll revert back. It's a constant journey, but it's one worth going down for sure.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us for our next episode where we talk about identifying and hiring great people. This has been Piece by Piece, a business podcast by Lumbermen's.